She was just taking inventory, where nobody bothered to look. Could this officer hold a secret that changes everything? Another nameless officer in the vast carrier Hyperion. Until Fleet Admiral Vega noticed something that changed everything. A forbidden patch sewn onto her sleeve. In that frozen moment, he realized this forgotten lieutenant was the reason 5,000 people were still alive. The truth about heroes is rarely what we expect. From which city in the world are you watching this video today? If this story resonates with you, consider subscribing for more tales of unsung heroes who changed the world from the shadows. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead as Lieutenant Amarus ran her scanner across a dusty crate of outdated communication modules. The device beeped once, confirming the inventory match, and she made a small notation on her tablet. Her movements were precise, economical, the kind of efficiency that came from someone trying not to be noticed. Storage Section D9 was the forgotten corner of the massive Hyperion carrier. Most crew members couldn't even locate it on a ship schematic, which was precisely why Thal had requested an assignment here 6 months ago. Another requisition for the Ghost, Ensign Farrow announced, dropping a stack of forms onto her small desk. He didn't wait for acknowledgement before turning to leave. Try not to take all week this time. They kept her eyes down, offering only a slight nod. As Farrow's footsteps faded, she allowed herself a small exhale. The less interaction, the better. She'd cultivated a reputation as the quiet, possibly incompetent officer who'd somehow gotten herself demoted to inventory duty. It was working perfectly. As she resumed scanning, voices drifted from the corridor outside. "Have you seen the inventory lady? I heard she crashed a shuttle during training. Cost the fleet millions," one voice said. "Nah," another replied. "Rumor is she disobeyed a direct order during the Proxima conflict." The scarred hands continued their methodical work, betraying nothing. Let them talk. Being underestimated was part of her cover. When the corridor emptied, she quickly checked her encrypted messages. A single line appeared. "Inspection tomorrow. Maintain protocol." He doesn't know. Thiel deleted the message and reached into her pocket, removing a small gray patch with a single silver star. With practiced movements, she began sewing it onto the underside of her sleeve, where it would remain hidden unless she chose to reveal it. The insignia of Echo Division, a unit that officially didn't exist. The only personal item in her sparse workspace was a faded star chart pinned above her terminal. Not decorative, but functional. The chart contains subtle markings that only someone with her training would recognize as Centauri fleet movements. She completed her inventory duties with time to spare, then sat at her terminal, entering a complex sequence that bypassed standard security protocols. The ship's AI wouldn't flag her activities. Echo Division operatives were ghosts in the system, present but undetectable. They reviewed the intelligence she'd been gathering. The Century were moving ships to the Tau sector. Despite all official reports indicating their presence at Proxima, 6 months of careful observation, cross-referencing cargo manifests, fuel consumption rates, and crew rotations had confirmed her suspicions. The Hyperion was sailing into a trap, and Admiral Vega needed to know. The ship-wide announcement came at 0800 hours. "Attention all personnel. Fleet Admiral Corbin Vega will conduct an unscheduled inspection beginning at 0900. All departments prepare accordingly." The corridor outside Storage Section D9 suddenly filled with frantic activity. Junior officers rushed past, barking orders and straightening uniforms. They remained at her station, only the slight tightening of her jaw indicating she'd heard the announcement. She waited until the initial chaos subsided before gathering a stack of inventory reports. The timing was deliberate. She needed to be in the main corridor when the Admiral passed. After months of waiting, this was her chance to confirm her suspicions about Operation Starburst. The main corridor was crowded when they arrived. Crew members are lining up at attention. She positioned herself near a junction, head down, clipboard clutched to her chest. Just another anonymous officer doing her job. The inspection party turned the corner with military precision. Admiral Vega led the procession, his weathered face impassive as the ship's captain recited performance statistics and crew accomplishments. Engineering efficiency up 12% this quarter, sir. And our tactical response times lead the fleet. Admiral Vega nodded, barely listening. What about the intelligence division? Any progress on identifying the Centauri fleet movements? Negative, sir. Conventional channels show nothing unusual. That's concerning, Vega replied. Operation Starburst succeeded because we had perfect intelligence. I want to know why we're blind now. They felt the Admiral's gaze sweep past her, then return. She had positioned herself so the patch, now visible from beneath her sleeve, would catch his attention. As the entourage approached, a junior officer shoved past Thal, knocking the clipboard from her hands. Papers were scattered across the floor. No one stopped to help as she knelt to gather them. The Admiral's voice halted mid-sentence. The entire procession stopped, but Vega waved them forward. Continue the inspection. I'll catch up momentarily. Heavy boots appeared in the peripheral vision. She kept her head down, heart pounding. Lieutenant, the Admiral's voice was quiet. That patch, where did you get it? They looked up, meeting his gaze directly for the first time. I believe you know, sir. Admiral Vega's expression remained neutral, but his eyes widened slightly, recognition, then calculation. My quarters, 20 minutes, he said, just loud enough for her to hear. Then louder. Carry on, Lieutenant. He rejoined his inspection party, leaving Flea to gather her scattered papers. No one had noticed the exchange. Perfect. 19 minutes later, Thiel stood outside the Admiral's quarters. The guard stationed there gave her suspicious looks. Lieutenant Amaris, reporting as ordered, she said, her posture perfect, but her demeanor subdued. The role of the nervous junior officer summoned before a fleet admiral came easily. One guard checked his data pad. You're not on the schedule. It's regarding the inventory discrepancies in Section D9, Thiel explained, her voice appropriately anxious. The Admiral requested immediate clarification. The guard frowned, but checked his comb unit. After a moment, he nodded and stepped aside. You're cleared. 10 minutes only. The door sealed behind her as she entered. Admiral Vega stood by the viewport, silhouetted against the stars. He didn't turn immediately. The Echo Division was disbanded 15 years ago. Vega's voice was controlled but tense. He paced the length of his quarters, hands clasped behind his back. The room was secure. Sweep for listening devices complete. Guards are posted outside. They stood at attention, silent. At least that's what I was told, Vega continued. After the Arcturus incident, Command said the program was too dangerous, operatives who could move undetected through enemy territory, who could become anyone. They couldn't be controlled. Some tools are too valuable to acknowledge. Admiral finally spoke, her voice surprisingly steady. Vega stopped pacing and activated his secure terminal. Files appeared. Classified mission reports, tactical analysis, and casualty statistics from Operation Starburst. 3 years ago, I received intelligence about the Century movement that saved my entire fleet. Source, unknown. He enlarged a section of data, except there was an embedded code in the transmission, a service number. The screen displayed a sequence that matched Thal's own identifier. You were behind enemy lines, Vega said, his voice hushed with realization. You're the reason we won. You're the reason 5,000 people on this ship are alive today. Ghost protocol requires complete anonymity, sir. I requested inventory duty because it provides access without visibility. Vega's expression hardened. You've been here 6 months. Why reveal yourself now? Before they could answer, the ship's alert system blared. The Admiral's comm unit activated. Admiral to the bridge immediately. Unidentified fleet approaching from the Tau sector. Vega's face paled. Tau sector? That's impossible. All intelligence indicates that the Centaur forces are concentrated at Proxima. Thiel finished. That intelligence is wrong. I've been sending reports for months, sir. No one listened. That's why you're here. Vega realized. On my ship. They nodded once. We're out of time, Admiral. The Hyperion is the target. The bridge erupted in controlled chaos as Vega entered with Thal 2 steps behind. Report, he commanded. The tactical officer responded immediately. An unidentified fleet emerging from the Tau corridor. Configuration matches Century battleships. 17 vessels heavily armed. How did we miss this? Vega demanded. All conventional intelligence indicated their fleet was at Proxima, sir, the intelligence officer explained. This makes no strategic sense. Vega turned to Thal. Lieutenant Amarus will be advising on tactical operations. The bridge fell silent. The executive officer stepped forward. Sir, with all due respect, Lieutenant Amarus is an inventory specialist in a combat situation. In a combat situation, I expect my officers to follow orders. Vega cut him off. He unpinned his command insignia and, in full view of the bridge crew, affixed it to Thali's uniform. This officer has saved more lives than everyone on this bridge combined. She stepped forward, her demeanor transformed. Dawn was the forgettable inventory specialist. Her voice carried authority as she addressed the tactical display. The Centauri fleet is using a new cloaking technology. What you're seeing is only their forward element. Their main battle group is here. She indicated a seemingly empty section of space. There's nothing there. The tactical officer objected. Target these coordinates. Thal insisted, entering a precise sequence. The weapons officer looked to Vega, who nodded. Do it. The Hyperion's main cannons fired into empty space and met resistance. Explosions blossomed where nothing had been visible moments before. 7 Centauri warships suddenly appeared on sensors, their cloaking systems disrupted. How did you know? The executive officer whispered. Thyla's eyes remained on the tactical display. Because I helped design their cloaking system, then sabotaged it. The bridge crew stared at her in stunned silence. The tactical officer recovered first, fingers flying over his console. Additional targets acquired, awaiting orders. Sir, Admiral Vega stood tall, with newfound confidence in his stance. Lieutenant Amarus has tactical command. All stations follow her directives. The battle lasted less than an hour. Under Theol's guidance, the Hyperion exploited weaknesses in the Centauri fleet that no conventional intelligence had identified. When the final enemy vessel retreated, an unnatural silence fell over the bridge. Admiral Vega stood facing his crew. What you witnessed today doesn't leave this room. Lieutenant Amarus' actions and identity are classified at the highest level. He turned to Thele and formally saluted her. After a moment's hesitation, the entire bridge crew followed suit. Echo Division was never disbanded, Vega announced. It just became invisible. And today, we all owe our lives to it. They returned the salute, her posture impeccable. For the first time in years, she stood not as a shadow but as herself, an elite operative whose greatest accomplishment had been remaining unseen. Later, as the Hyperion began repairs, Vega found Lily in a quiet observation deck. Command wants to promote you, he said without preamble. Public commendation, the works. She shook her head. That would defeat the purpose, Admiral. I thought you might say that. Vega handed her a secure data crystal. These are orders directly from Fleet Command. You're to establish a new Echo Division with full autonomy and resources, sir. The universe is changing, Lieutenant. We need people who can move in the shadows and cover. Vegas smiled slightly. As far as the crew is concerned, you've been reassigned after the inventory audit, back to being a ghost. They nodded, accepting the weight of the responsibility. That's all I've ever been, sir. 2 weeks after the battle, Thiel was gone from the Hyperion. Her quarters were empty, her personnel file updated to show a transfer to a remote outpost. Only Admiral Vega knew the truth. The facility was unmarked, buried deep within an asteroid in neutral space. Inside, Thal, now Commander Amaris, reviewed files on potential recruits. Each had been selected for their unique skills and psychological profiles. Each had officially washed out of service or taken obscure postings. Her first choice was Lieutenant Zay Navar, a communication specialist who had supposedly been discharged after a mental breakdown. In reality, Navar had discovered an encryption pattern in enemy transmissions that no one else had noticed. His superiors had dismissed his findings as paranoia. The second was Dr. Ant, a xenobiologist whose research into Centauri physiology had been deemed too speculative by the medical establishment. Her theories about genetic weaknesses in the enemy species could prove invaluable. The third, Tactical Officer Ever Risk, had been relegated to a desk job after questioning a superior's battle strategy. His innovative approach to combat scenarios marked him as a freethinker, someone who could see beyond conventional tactics. All three shared one critical trait. They had been sidelined for seeing what others couldn't or wouldn't see. Thiel was reviewing their files when a priority transmission arrived from Admiral Vega. A new threat was emerging in the Outer Rim. Someone would need to go in, gather intelligence, perhaps sabotage key systems. Someone who could become invisible. They smiled. She was already planning her cover. 6 months later, the newly formed Echo Division gathered in their hidden base for the first time. The three recruits stood at attention as they entered the room. At ease, she said, studying their faces. Each showed a mixture of curiosity and caution. Good. Blind trust was dangerous in their line of work. You're here because you understand that recognition and accomplishment aren't always the same thing, and the explanation, pacing before them. Echo Division exists in the space between official action and necessity. Risk raised an eyebrow. With all due respect, Commander, we've been told nothing except that we're now part of a unit that doesn't officially exist. That's correct, Officer Risk. And that's all many will ever know. They'll activate a holographic display showing the Hyperion, now the flagship of a fleet protecting the core systems. Every person aboard that ship is alive because someone was willing to disappear. That's what we do. We make the impossible possible, and we never ask for credit. Dr. VA stepped forward. Commander, if we succeed, no one will ever know what we've done. Our names won't appear in any record. Thiel smiled slightly. Some heroes are remembered by their names, Doctor. Others are remembered by what they made possible. She deactivated the display. You have each experienced what happens when the system fails to listen. Echo Division is the answer to that failure. We go where others cannot. We see what others miss. And when necessary, we act without waiting for permission. Navar frowned. That sounds dangerously close to operating outside the chain of command. We operate beyond it. Thale confirmed. Our authority comes directly from Fleet Command, but our methods remain our own. She gestured to a nearby console where a star map highlighted a distant sector. Our first mission begins tomorrow. The Centauri have established a research facility in the Danube system. According to our intelligence, they're developing a new weapon capable of disabling our defensive shields. Intelligence from where? Risk asked. I thought conventional channels were compromised. From me, they said simply, I spent the past 6 months as a maintenance worker on a Centauri supply station. This is what I discovered. She transferred data to their personal devices. Study it, memorize it, then delete it. The three recruits exchanged glances. Questions? Thal asked. Just one, Dr. Vance said. Why yes? They considered the question carefully. Because each of you saw the truth when others saw only what they expected to see. In our work, that's the difference between success and failure. She dismissed them to prepare for the mission, remaining alone in the command center. Her secure terminal blinked with an incoming transmission from Admiral Vega. Status report, Commander. Team assembled. Mission parameters established. We deploy at 0600. Vega nodded. The Council is nervous about reactivating the Echo Division. There are concerns about oversight. There always are, Theo replied. But they approved it anyway. Because they're afraid. The Centauri attack on the Hyperion proved that our conventional intelligence has been compromised. They leaned closer to the screen. It's worse than they know, Admiral. During my time undercover, I discovered evidence that the compromise goes deeper than intelligence. We have high-level infiltrators in Fleet Command itself. Vega's expression darkened. Can you identify them? Not yet, but I will. Be careful, Commander. If what you're suggesting is true, then no one can be fully trusted. They smiled grimly. That's why Echo Division operates in the shadows, sir. Sometimes the only way to protect the light is from the dark. The transmission ended, leaving Theo alone with her thoughts. She accessed a hidden file revealing images of several high-ranking officers. One of them was passing information to the enemy. One of them was responsible for the deaths of countless fleet personnel. And the Allah had narrowed it down to 3 suspects. The first mission would serve 2 purposes. Stop the weapon development and test her new team. But her personal mission, the one not even Admiral Vega knew about, was to identify the traitor in their midst. She studied the faces on her screen. Admiral Cora, head of Fleet Intelligence. General Tamus, commander of the 7th Expeditionary Force, and Vice Admiral Renit, the Admiral's own Chief of Staff. One of them had blood on their hands. One of them had nearly gotten the Hyperion destroyed, and one of them was going to pay. They closed the file as a soft chime indicated the approach of her team. Time to focus on the mission at hand. The hunt for the traitor would come later. The next morning, Echo Division deployed on its first official mission. Their transport was unmarked, their identities concealed behind false credentials. To all official records, they were a maintenance crew assigned to a routine inspection of a communication relay near the Danube system. As they approach the target, they'll brief the team on their roles. Navarre, you'll access their communication systems and plant the surveillance package. Vant, your priority is gathering samples of the biological components they're using in the weapon design. Risk, you'll map their security protocols and identify weaknesses for future operations. And you, Commander, Risk asked. I'll ensure we all get out alive, Theo replied evenly. The Centauri research facility orbited a barren moon, its exterior designed to resemble a mining operation. Their approach triggered no alarms, and their forged clearances were accepted without question. As they docked, they felt the familiar calm of operation mode settle over her. This was what she was trained for. This was who she truly was. Not the forgotten lieutenant in a storage room, not even the tactical genius who had saved the Hyperion. She was a shadow, moving through enemy territory unseen, changing the course of the war, one secret mission at a time. The facility's docking officer greeted them with barely a glance at their credentials. Maintenance Bay 3 is ready for your equipment. How long will the inspection take? Standard procedure, they replied in flawless Centauri dialect. 8 hours unless we find issues with the relay matrices. The officer nodded, already bored. Register with security before accessing the communication hub. They were in. The next 6 hours went precisely according to plan. Navarre installed the surveillance package while disguised as a systems technician. VA collected the biological samples during a routine medical screening. Risk mapped the entire security grid under the guise of a safety inspection. It was during the final hour that everything changed. The monitoring of their extraction route intercepted a transmission that sent ice through her veins. Priority alert to all security personnel. Human infiltrators detected in Research Section 7. Lockdown protocols initiated. They had been compromised, but how? Their covers were perfect. Their timing is impeccable. Unless someone had told the Century they were coming. She activated her emergency comlink. Abort mission. Proceed to the extraction point Delta immediately. She received 3 acknowledgments as alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Security teams would be converging on their last known locations. They had minutes at most. Fail access to maintenance shaft, climbing rapidly toward the rendezvous point. Her mind raced through possibilities. A random security check? Unlikely. A flaw in their cover identities. She had created them herself. No, this was deliberate. Someone had warned the Century. Someone from Fleet Command. She reached the extraction point first, securing the area as her team arrived one by one. Risk was last, sporting a plasma burn on his left arm. Had to take a detour, he explained grimly. They were waiting at the primary junction. She nodded, her suspicions confirmed. Everyone is on board now. Their transport detached from the station as the first security team reached the docking bay. Weapon fire splashed harmlessly against their shields as they accelerated away. Only when they were safely in hyperspace did she allow herself to breathe normally. Commander Navarre said quietly. That wasn't a coincidence, was it? No, Thale confirmed. It wasn't. Someone knew we were coming, Vance said, her expression troubled. Someone told them. They met each other's gaze in turn. Welcome to Echo Division. Lesson 1. Trust no one outside this room. As her team processed this revelation, Thal's mind returned to the three suspects. The traitor had just made their first move against Echo Division, and they had just moved to the top of the priority list. The debriefing room in the Echo Division base was silent as Thale presented her findings to the team. Despite the compromised mission, they had managed to extract valuable intelligence. Dr. Vance's biological samples confirmed that the Century were developing organic components that could interface with and disable human shield technology. Navarre's surveillance package was successfully planted before their hasty retreat, and Risk's security assessment provided multiple access points for future operations. But the most pressing concern remained unaddressed until they switched off the recording devices. We have a traitor in Fleet Command, she said bluntly. Someone with knowledge of the Echo Division and our operations. How can you be certain? Navarre asked. The Century knew exactly where to look for us. Their security teams were waiting at strategic points that only someone with knowledge of our mission's parameters would anticipate. They brought up a secure display showing the three suspects. I've narrowed it down to these individuals. Risk studied the images. Admiral Cora, General Tamus, and Vice Admiral Renat. All high-ranking, all with access to classified information. And all with the authority to compromise our operations, Thale confirmed. But which one? Dr. Vant leaned forward. How do we find out? If we confront them directly, the traitor will simply go deeper underground. We don't confront them, they said. We set a trap. Each will receive different information about our next operation. Only the traitor's information will be accurate. A canary trap. Navarre nodded appreciatively. Elegant and dangerous. Risk added. If the traitor realizes what we're doing, we'll be the ones walking into a trap. Thal's expression was resolute. It's a risk we have to take. The longer this traitor operates, the more lives are lost. The team spent the next 3 days planning the operation. Each suspect would receive intelligence about a different Echo Division mission. Admiral Cora would be told they were infiltrating a Centauri communications hub in the Proxima system. General Tamus would receive information about a planned raid on a supply depot near the Arcturus sector, and Vice Admiral Renat would learn of their actual target, a Centauri research outpost developing the next generation of cloaking technology. Only one mission would take place. Only one suspect would be able to betray them. As preparations continued, Thale received an encrypted transmission from Admiral Vega. The Council is pressing for results, Commander. The Century advances in the Outer Rim have accelerated. We're losing ground. We're making progress, Admiral. The intelligence from our last mission confirms they're developing technology that could cripple our fleet defenses. I need more than confirmation. Tylet, weighing how much to reveal. There is a complication. We have reason to believe there's a leak at the highest levels of command. Vega's expression darkened. You have evidence. Our last mission was compromised. The Century was waiting for us. That could be a security breach, not necessarily a traitor. We're investigating all possibilities, sir. Vega studied her for a moment. Be careful, Commander. Accusations of this magnitude require absolute proof. Understood, Admiral. After the transmission ended, Thale stared at the blank screen. She hadn't told Vega about the canary trap. She hadn't named the suspects, one of whom was his own chief of staff. Trust no one outside this room, even Admiral Vega. The day of the operation arrived, and all 3 pieces of false intelligence had been carefully placed. She gathered her team for final preparations. Remember, we only get one chance at this. If the traitor suspects we're onto them, they'll disappear. What if none of them is the traitor? Dr. Vant asked. What if we're looking in the wrong direction entirely? Then the mission proceeds as planned, and we reconsider our suspects. They replied. But my instincts tell me we're right. Their transport departed under the cover of a routine patrol. According to all official records, Echo Division was conducting a training exercise in a remote sector. Only the 3 suspects knew otherwise. The journey to the research outpost was tense. Each team member focused on their assigned tasks, mentally preparing for what might await them. If their trap worked, the Century would be expecting them. If it failed, they might walk into an entirely different kind of ambush. As they approached the target, they activated the ship's passive sensors. The outpost appeared normal with standard security protocols in place. No unusual activity, no additional patrols. Initial readings suggest no heightened alert status. Navarre reported. That could mean our trap failed. Risk said that the traitor is more cautious this time. Thale countered. Proceed as planned, but stay alert. They docked at a maintenance port using falsified credentials as before. The docking officer was different, but the procedure was the same. Cursory checks, minimal questions. They were cleared to proceed. The team split up, each heading to their assigned section of the outpost. She made her way toward the command center, where she could monitor both the mission and any unusual communications. She was halfway there when the first sign of trouble appeared. A security team moves with purpose down a corridor that should have been empty at this hour. They ducked into an alcove, watching as they passed. Their weapons were drawn. She activated her calm link, keeping her voice low. Possible security alert in progress. Maintain cover, but be prepared for extraction. Acknowledgements came from each team member. They continued toward the command center, now moving with greater caution. The command center was sparsely staffed with only 3 officers on duty. She adjusted her maintenance uniform and entered with a repair kit, nodding to the ranking officer. Routine diagnostic on the environmental controls, she explained, moving to a console near the communication station. The officer barely glanced at her. Be quick about it. They began the pretense of running diagnostics while accessing the security feeds through a hidden subroutine in her toolkit. What she saw confirmed her suspicions. Security teams were mobilizing throughout the station. They knew. All units abort the mission. She whispered into her comm, proceed to the extraction point immediately. She received acknowledgements from Risk and Virginia. Navarre was silent. Lieutenant Navarre acknowledged, Thale said, keeping her voice steady as she continued working on the console. Nothing. She switched to his locator beacon. The signal showed him in a secure area near the research labs. Not moving. Thale completed her facade of repairs and left the command center, heading toward Navarre's last known location. She activated the emergency channel to the other team members. Navarre is compromised. Adjust the extraction plan. Rendezvous at Point Epsilon. She moved through the corridors with purposeful strides, avoiding security patrols with practiced ease. The station's layout was similar to the previous facility, allowing her to use maintenance tunnels and service areas to remain undetected. When she reached the section where Navarre's beacon showed him located, she found it locked down. Security personnel stood guard at every entrance. They retreated to a service junction, considering her options. A direct rescue attempt would compromise the entire team, but leaving Navarre behind was unacceptable. She accessed the station's environmental controls through her toolkit, initiating a localized atmospheric alert in a section far from both Navarre's location and the extraction point. Alarms blared as emergency protocols activated, drawing security personnel away from their posts. In the confusion, Theo slipped past the remaining guards and into the secured area. What she found inside stopped her cold. Navarre was there, but he wasn't restrained. He wasn't injured. He was standing with a Centauri officer reviewing data on a console. He looked up as Dali entered, his expression shifting from surprise to resignation. "Commander," he said quietly. "You shouldn't be here." The hand moved to her concealed weapon. "Explain, Lieutenant." The Centauri officer stepped back, watching the exchange with interest. "It's not what you think," Navarre began. "I'm not a traitor." "Then what are you doing here?" "Working with the enemy." "The same thing you are," he replied. "Gathering intelligence, following orders." "Whose orders?" Navarre glanced at the Centauri officer, who nodded slightly. "Admiral Cora's." The pieces began falling into place. "You're working for Cora directly, a separate operation parallel to the Echo Division. He recruited me 6 months ago. Said there was evidence of a traitor in Fleet Command, someone selling out our operations to the Centauri. My mission was to find proof by working with Centauri. By pretending to, Navarre corrected. Officer Tila here is actually one of ours. Deep cover for the past 3 years. The Centauri officer Tila stepped forward. Lieutenant Navarre is telling the truth, Commander. We've been tracking Centauri intelligence movements, trying to identify their source in Fleet Command. Thiel kept her weapon ready. Why wasn't I informed of this operation? Admiral Cora believed the traitor might have access to Echo Division intelligence. Navarre explained. He kept our operation completely separate as a precaution. And what have you discovered? Navarre and Tila exchanged glances. We've confirmed the traitor's identity. Tekla said, it's Vice Admiral Renit. The name hit Thiel like a physical blow. Admiral Vega's chief of staff. The person closest to him with access to all his communications, all his decisions. We have proof, Navarre added, accessing the console, encrypted transmissions, meeting logs, and financial transfers. Renit has been working for Centauri for at least 2 years. She studied the evidence, her mind racing. If Renit is the traitor, then he knows about our canary trap. He knows we're here. Yes, Tekla confirmed. Security teams are searching for you and your team now. They have orders to shoot on sight. We need to move. Thali decided to include both of you with me. We'll rendezvous with the rest of the team at Extraction Point Epsilon. They moved through the station using Tekla's security clearance to avoid patrols. When they reached the extraction point, Risk and VA were already there, weapons ready. Stand down, Thiel ordered as they trained their weapons on Navarre and Tekla. They're with us. Quickly, she explained the situation as they boarded their transport and prepared for departure. So, Admiral Cora was investigating the traitor separately, Risk said, processing the information. And now we know it's Renat. The question is what we do with this information, Van added. If Renat is as highly placed as you say, accusing him will be dangerous. We don't accuse, they'll say firmly. We act. This ends now. They departed the station without incident. Tekla's clearance codes ensure a clean exit. Once in hyperspace, the crew contacted Admiral Vega on a secure channel. Mission successful, Admiral. We've identified the source of the intelligence leak. Vega's expression was grim. Who is it? I think this conversation should happen in person, sir. We'll be arriving at Fleet Headquarters in 6 hours. I'll clear my schedule, Vega promised. And well done. The transmission ended, and they turned to her team. We have 6 hours to prepare. When we reach headquarters, we'll need to move quickly. Renat will know something's wrong the moment we request a meeting with the Admiral. He might run, Risk suggested. Or he might try to eliminate the threat, Vant added. Us. Either way, we'll be ready, Theo assured them. This is what the Echo Division was created for, to see what others miss and to act when others cannot. 6 hours later, they docked at Fleet Headquarters. They had spent the journey reviewing the evidence and planning their approach. The proof against Renit was substantial. Communications records, meeting logs, financial transactions, and more than enough to convince Admiral Vega. But convincing Vega was only the first step. Renit had allies and connections throughout Fleet Command. They would need to move decisively to prevent him from escaping justice. As they disembarked, a junior officer approached. Commander Amaru's, Admiral Vega, is waiting for you in his private office. He asked that you come alone. They exchanged glances with her team. Thank you, Ensign. My team will wait in the secure briefing room adjacent to the Admiral's office. The Ensign hesitated. I was instructed to bring only you, Commander. My team goes where I go, Ensign. Those are my orders. After a moment's consideration, the Ensign nodded. Yes, Commander. This way, please. They followed him through the corridors of headquarters. Thale noted the increased security presence. Either Vega was taking precautions, or something else was happening. The Admiral's office was located in the central command tower with views overlooking the fleet yards. When they arrived, the Ensign ushered Thal's team into the adjacent briefing room before escorting her to the main office. Admiral Vega was standing at the viewport, his back to the door. Vice Admiral Renette sat at the conference table, data pad spread before him. They felt her muscles tense at the sight of the traitor. She kept her expression neutral as the door closed behind her. Admiral, she greeted Vega formally. Vice Admiral. Vega turned, his face grave. Commander Amaris, you said you identified the source of our intelligence leak. Yes, sir. Thiel replied, her eyes flicking briefly to Rent, who watched her with calculating intensity. We have conclusive evidence. She placed a data crystal on the table. Everything is here, Admiral. Communications records, financial transactions, and meeting logs. The traitor has been working with the Centauri for at least 2 years. Vega picked up the crystal, studying it. And the traitor is? They met his gaze directly. Vice Admiral Renit, sir. The room went still. Renit's expression didn't change, but his hand moved slowly toward his side. That's a serious accusation, Commander, Vega said carefully. It's not an accusation, Admiral. It's a fact. She maintained her composure, aware that Renit was assessing his options. The evidence is irrefutable. Vega inserted the crystal into his secure terminal. Files appeared on the display, damning in their clarity. Encrypted communications to Centauri intelligence, classified fleet movements, operational details of Echo Division missions. Renette stood suddenly, his hand drawing a concealed weapon. This is fabricated. She's the traitor, not me. Vega didn't look up from the display. Security, enter. The door slid open, but instead of security officers, the team entered. Weapons trained on Renit. Put down your weapon, Vice Admiral, the officer ordered. Renit's eyes darted between them, calculating his chances. Finding none, he slowly lowered his weapon. You knew, he said to Vega. You already knew. I suspected, Vega corrected. When Commander Amarus informed me of a possible traitor in command, I began my own investigation. Your recent activities confirmed my suspicions. I just needed proof. Security officers entered, taking Renit into custody. As they led him away, he looked back at them with cold hatred. This isn't over, Commander. There are others. The Echo Division will never be safe. When the door closed behind him, Vega turned to T and her team. Excellent work, all of you, especially coordinating with Admiral Cora's operation. That couldn't have been easy. It wasn't, sir, Thiel admitted. But it was necessary. What happens now, Admiral? Risk asked. Now, Vega looked out at the fleet yard where ships were prepared for deployment. Now we take the fight to the Centauri. Without their inside source, we have the advantage again. He turned back to them. An Echo Division will lead the way. They nodded, accepting the responsibility. For years, she had worked in shadows, unacknowledged and unknown. That wouldn't change. Echo Division would remain invisible, moving through the darkness to protect the light, just as she had always done, just as she would continue to do. Have you ever known someone who never asked for recognition, but deserved more than anyone else, someone whose greatest contributions remained hidden while others took the credit? Share your story in the comments below. Sometimes the most important people are the ones we never see. If you enjoyed this story, click the like button and subscribe to Graceful Valor Stories so you don't miss the subscribe to Graceful Valor Stories, where quiet strength is celebrated, and every hero story finds a voice.